Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. We have an exciting morning. It's beautiful out there. You can see your weather on the screen. Coming up around 7:20, we're going to be talking with Assemblyman Chris Friend, and what an appropriate time. He's actually going to call in from Albany. But there's so much to discuss, and we're going to get to some of those stories in just a little bit about Governor Hochul's various proposals. Something interesting to come out yesterday about the topic we've talked about a lot about, the pot shops. We've seen them locally. They've been all throughout the state. We're going to tell you a little bit about that coming up in just a little bit. As a reminder, we have on the program tomorrow our new Congressman, Nick Langworthy. He's going to join us. And on Monday, it's Elmira Mayor Dan Mandel. And then on Tuesday, for our friends in Hornell Mayor John Buckley. So you see, I just put up the contact information. You can, and it's not too late for Chris Friend either to get the questions in there, either text, call, or email, and we'll get those questions all together and ask whichever representative you want me to ask. And that's the same contact information if you have a local charity maybe you work for, you want to get either an interview or promote an upcoming fundraiser. That's also the place that if you are a candidate, and I know there's a lot of candidates vying to get the signatures for petitions, you can reach me there as well. We'd love to have you on the program. So as I said, we're going to talk a little bit here. I got to take a short break right at the top, but we're going to talk about New York, a lot about the budget. That's this time of year. The deadline coming up on April 1st. Many speculating we're not going to make that deadline, but time will tell. There's some back and forth with Governor Hochul still pushing to keep her version of bail reform. Probably not enough teeth there, but at least it's a step. At least it's an attempt, maybe, is the word we would use. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, what's being said statewide, and as I said, Assemblyman Chris Friend will weigh in on all these issues. Bail reform has been a major topic here on the program from our sheriffs in both Chemung County and Steuben County, but also our representatives. I did want to highlight that I've been working hard, and actually some of it has been people reaching out to me as well, but to get more interviews. I will keep you updated on those. I know that you want to know who's going to be on the program, so you can ask questions via our contact. But we have some pretty exciting guests coming up, and thank you to everybody who has reached out there. If you've missed a program, or maybe you've missed an interview, or maybe you just want to watch again, you woke up and made us a part of your morning routine, and you say, Chemung County Executive Moss said something yesterday I'd like to hear again, or Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. All of our episodes are up on Facebook. And, well, that's interviews, excuse me. The full episodes are up on YouTube. So Facebook, you can see just the interviews. On YouTube, you can see the whole show. So spread the word. Maybe you know a friend that would love this program. Send them the YouTube clip and say, watch this interview from this morning. I know you'll be hooked. So every morning, every weekday morning at 7, join us here on Frankly Speaking, live from the Hesselson studio. It's a beautiful day out there, currently around 50 degrees. Feels beautiful. So stay with us. We're broadcasting live from Market Street. We got to take our first short break and then on to some local and New York State issues. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So as I said, Assemblyman Chris Friend coming up in just a moment. Let's take a look at Governor Hochul, what she is suggesting with this budget. It's interesting to me that safety, when we talk about bail reform, which we've talked about a lot, when we talk about safety of our residents, that has somehow become a divisive political issue, where she is continuing to push her reforms. Again, it doesn't go far enough, but let's put that to the side. I don't have to keep running that disclaimer. It's a small little attempt for just a minor change when it comes to bail reform, and yet the progressives and the left in Albany are fighting back on that. So safety has become a divisive issue. So let's take a look. Here we go. the left coming out, the progressives, saying that that the gloves are off. They're not going to give in even an inch. But when you look at the statistics, violent crimes, thefts, are rising statewide. I know this is from the New York Post, but this is not just a city issue. We've seen it locally, and we talked to both sheriffs and Chemung County Executive Chris Moss about it just yesterday. Now, at the press conference that Governor Hochul ran the other day, she said, "I want to remove any question about whether a judge has discretion to set bail or remand individuals. It's just common sense. It's supported by most New Yorkers, and the data is also with us." The data is with us. And I mean, you can look at the numbers. It's always said the politicians can make numbers work in their favor pretty easily. But just think of anecdotally how many people that have been affected by this rise in crime. State data released just yesterday shows the so-called index crimes, which is murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle thefts. They have risen by 27% in total in 2022, last year. And I'm sure that has not slowed down. And 21% statewide compared to the previous year, despite decreases in shootings and murder. But what this does, and I know I keep using this visual, if you will, where it ties the hands of police, this bail reform. It makes them essentially the bad guy in this ordeal. And then you've got the criminals, the actual bad guys, who are not only not really punished, they're being encouraged. And it's led to this recidivism. It's led to a lot of, well, again, like I said, the increase in crime. Now, what did this do when she wanted to make just a small change? The Democrat supermajority. Remember, this is what happens when one party controls everything. The supermajority in the state Senate, and Assembly rejected her bail proposal in budget resolutions they passed just last week. And progressives vowed yesterday to turn up the heat on Hochul during the budget negotiations. So this minor change is enough to really have that supermajority turn on her. Of course, it's a power move. It's to show who's really in charge, I think, is what you're seeing from some of these people on the far left. We see it at the national level quite frequently when maybe an AOC or something like that tries to make that power move to show who's really boss of either the party or boss when it comes to being in the supermajority. So we're not staying silent anymore, Assemblywoman Latrice Walker from Brooklyn said. The gloves are off. So apparently Governor Hochul going too far with just that minor change. That's a scary thought when you talk about supermajorities. That's a scary thought of things to come here in New York, when something that is common sense is so roundly rejected, by the supermajority and specifically the progressive wing of the supermajority of the Democrat Party in Albany. Few other New York issues before we get to, and how appropriate, because we have Assemblyman Chris Friend who's going to join us, and we'll be asking him about these proposals specifically. But we'll talk about this a little bit more when we come back. We do have to take a short break, but as I said, it's not too late to get that information in. If you have any questions, comments, concerns for Assemblyman Chris Friend, there's the contact information. We keep the phone number on the bottom of the screen so you can always text. I'll be checking right up until the last second so we can get your questions in. All right, stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. It's beautiful out there today. We are live from Marcus Street in Corning. Let's get to the next quick story before we have Chris Friend on. Again, a question or a topic that we're going to be asking him as well. I know we've talked a lot about these whatever you want to call them, pot stores, sticker stores. There's various names for them. It's whatever you think about the stores themselves. Some municipalities opted in to allow them in their area. Some opted out so we could find out more about what the rules and regulations were actually going to be coming from Albany because they were so murky. But people have asked the question, how are they legal? They're not state-run. doesn't seem like we're getting the revenue as a state that we should be getting from them. And Governor Hochul is now, and this is coming from the Buffalo News, as you see, proposing to shut down these illegal pot stores. You've probably seen them everywhere. They pop up, it seems like, every day, some new location when you drive by. So they, as you see here, a $10,000 fine. That's per day of unlawful operation. The proposed legislation would increase civil and tax penalties for the unlicensed sale of marijuana. Now, this is very different than the dispensaries that the state approved. And that's why I think this is kind of a fascinating look at politics and why I bring it up. Because it's not just about the law itself and enforcing the law. It's also about how Governor Hochul is going to sell it. If you remember, Governor Cuomo, her predecessor, Hochul's predecessor, he was very anti-marijuana right up until the end. And I don't know if it was poll numbers or what led him to think that maybe something would change if he allowed legalized pot. Maybe it was to play to the progressive wing. Now Hochul's got to tread that fine line because, first of all, the far left is mad about her bail reforms and some other proposals in her budget. But this seems to be an issue that the left is really galvanized around, which is legalized marijuana. But again, there was no clear rules and regulations on these stores that have popped up out of nowhere. The law only applies, again, to unlicensed storefront dispensaries. It does not impose any new penalty related to possession as an individual. But violations of the proposed legislation could lead to fines of $200,000 for illicit plants or products, and that's $10,000 per day. This is going to be interesting, and this is why I mentioned, because how does she sell it? I go back to that point. How does she sell it to her far left supporters? Well, and I think I have this story up here. Let me double check. Yes. So just another headline from New York Post on this topic, because it's essentially a black market, right? What we're seeing now, and especially this one focuses on New York City. But this is what Governor Hochul said. The continued existence of illegal dispensaries is unacceptable. And we need additional enforcement tools to protect New Yorkers from dangerous products. And this is what I find interesting. And support our equity initiatives. And this is how she's going to sell it. Because if you look at how the rules were crafted for the legal dispensaries, the state-approved dispensaries, the first group up that could apply for the license were people that had been arrested for drug possession, marijuana possession, marijuana sales, to try to, in their mind, even what they deem was a past wrong. So I think that's her only hope at actually maybe making some headway, some progress with this, because she's going to have to sell it from the equity initiative standpoint, the equity of this is why we have the legal state dispensaries, and these people are flying in the face of diversity, flying in the face of equity, I should say, by opening and having these stores pop up everywhere. As a matter of fact, this article says that the illicit marijuana stores, they even got so brazen that in New York City they open up right across from City Hall. They close and open again. That doesn't matter. But she's going to have to show, in her mind, it's a PR spin is what it is, that illegal pot place down the street from you, that they are flying in the face of equity and not helping those that need help the most. So we'll see if it's successful. I have my doubts. I could see some enforcement mechanism, because right now it's kind of the wild, wild west. So I do think that they may get something through, but $10,000 a day could be a tough sell. And we're going to follow that, because that's just one of many stories coming out of New York that, well, it's the unintended consequences. You know, they say, okay, you can gift marijuana in these places in a very smart way. Said, okay, well, we're going to gift you this if you buy this sticker, or you buy this marble, or whatever the product may be. One of the other concerns I think Governor Hochul and others will push is that they're marketing to kids, because the New York Post article actually mentions that a couple of the products were called Captain Crunch and Trix, of course, kids' breakfast cereals. So that may be another important avenue that she goes down to try to push this. All right, we got to take a short break, because I've got to give Chris Friend a call. We're going to ask him there last time to send in questions because I want to get him on the phone. He's calling in live from Albany. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Stay with us. We're just hearing Chris and I's conversation. I think the show's going great. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This interview, of course, brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. We want to get to our main camera there. On the line this morning, calling from Albany, we have Assemblyman Chris Friend. Chris, thanks so much for being on the program.
Sure thing. Thanks, Frank. And I want to say congratulations to coming back on the air and being live on Market Street. Our area desperately needs your attention and your ability to report the news and local events, both local and national, actually. You do a great job getting in some of those national reports also. It's just been really difficult. I hear from people all the time, what's going on, what's happening, and they just don't get it from the other local news sources that are disappearing. Right,
they're disappearing, and also I think what's unique about this, you know this, Chris. You go on wherever. I'm not going to point anybody out, but you go to a news outlet and you get a 10-second clip or a 20-second clip. You and I now have about 20 minutes to talk about everything, all the wackiness going on in Albany, and I think it gives everybody more of an opportunity to learn what exactly is happening.
Right, and that's the huge difference from the press releases and statements that are typically reported either in the newspaper or the local news channels.
Mm-hmm. Assemblyman Chris Friend is our guest. You see him up on the screen there, calling from Albany. So, Chris, fill us in. We talked with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano just the other day. What does the budget process look like? Where do we stand right now, and what do you think? This is a long question. What do you think about the budget suggestions so far?
Yeah, so we are in the final throes of this year's budget, and we got off to a pretty decent start. There have been a lot of hiccups. Everything's kind of been moving through as it should. We had the budget hearings that went through about almost 4 weeks of both State Department officials and state activists and local groups coming up to testify about the impact that the state budget would have. And then the Senate and the Assembly came out with their one-house plans, what they wanted to see in the budget last week. And this week we started the process of what's called the joint budget hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So the mothership met, as we referred to it on Monday. That's the overall budget hearing. And then on Tuesday, all the individual committees met.
Okay.
And some of the stuff that I advocated for there, I serve on the economic budget hearing joint committee, and we want to see a five-way discussion instead of the typical three-way discussion,
mm-hmm.
so that we could have more interaction and have all New Yorkers represented, not just really the downstate interests. Even though Governor Hochul is from upstate, she really has to cater to the legislature, and they're both dominated, both the Senate and the Assembly are dominated by New York City interests. So Governor Hochul doesn't really have much to support herself, and if she were to bring in the Assembly and Senate minorities, she would give herself a big leg up. And we're pleading with her to try to allow our leadership to come into the room during those negotiations. But just to give you some of the statistics on business climate in New York State, New York small businesses continue to battle unparalleled and unique challenges due to the pandemic and corresponding economic trials. 54% of upstate New York CEOs say business conditions have worsened over the last year, and only 19%, that's down from 36% last year, expect improvement in the coming year, according to the 16th Annual Upstate New York Business Leader Survey from Siena College Research Institute.
Wow.
And then, of course, in New York State, we have tens of thousands of business regulations that have led to oppressive business climate and prominent companies leaving for more friendly states. The Tech Foundation 2023 State Business Tax Climate ranked New York 49th. The Chief Executive 2022 Best and Worst State for Business. Again, New York ranked 49th. That's not 49th being 50th being the best. That's 49th at the bottom.
Right.
And 2022 Thumbtack Small Business Friendliness Survey, New York got an overall friendliness grade of F. So it's clear that we're continuing to move in the wrong direction. I mean, we know that almost 300,000 people left over COVID, and that was the biggest outmigration of any state in the nation. And we just continue to go in the wrong direction. We've lost a congressional member in this last round, and there's a good chance if we continue in this direction, we'll lose another congressional member 10 years out. So we've got to do something to make some changes. And right in our own community, just to get a little bit away from the budget, but in our own community, every time I'm coming home from Albany, I'm seeing new businesses pop up. And those new businesses tend to be related around marijuana.
Yeah.
And the sticker stores that are just growing leaps and bounds. And why is that? Well, part of it is just, I mean, people are craving that product. But all the other little shop owners see that their sales are going down. It's hard to get people into their stores. They're not selling, or the cost of goods that they have are going up. And they see other shops that are selling these products. And unfortunately, they're wholly unregulated. You can put anything in there that's related to THC and marijuana, and there's no enforcement at this point. But those lack of regulations allow you to have more freedom for what you bring in, where you're getting it from, how you're displaying it, and how you're selling it.
Well,
On the bad side of that, the consumer doesn't know what they're getting either. And we've pleaded with OCM to come in and do something, provide some resources to our sheriffs and our DAs to come in and regulate these stores, because currently there's only 2 stores in the southern tier that are actually regulated to sell marijuana.
Right.
One in Binghamton and one in Ithaca.
Well, Chris, I saw today, and I wonder, because it's almost like you were watching the show, even though you're in Albany, because we were just talking about this before break. I know that Governor Hochul is proposing legislation that would shut down some of these illegal pot stores. Do you see that going anywhere? I find that to be maybe a tough sell for her to her own party.
There is a move to try to do it, and in the legislature at the beginning of session, the 2 sponsors finally came to an agreement that something needs to be done with this whole sticker shop marijuana debacle that they've created, because it wasn't working the way that they wanted to work. And their initial intent was to go after the landlords and force the landlords to police their tenants as to whether or not they were selling legal goods or not. I don't know how that would happen, since we've given all the rights to the tenants in this state, and landlords have really, once the tenant signs a lease, the landlord has less ability to do anything with that tenant, and they don't have access to the courts. So I don't know where that was going. Kathy Hochul is trying to make some moves to strengthen something. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to take place during the budget. I think this is something that's going to happen outside the budget. But we do need to keep the pressure on to make some changes here, because if you go into some of these stores, I mean, first of all, a lot of people don't realize it's illegal. So they're opening these stores up because they see that other businesses are being able to sell the product, and they want to be able to get people through their doorways. And so when they're told that this is illegal, oh no, I didn't realize that, they stop selling it. But then you had some others in our community where, especially like in Tioga County, the sheriff and the DA have pulled out over $250,000 in cash, taken all of their edible equipment to manufacture edibles, and they are back up and running the next day. They've actually had people kind of pushing the sheriff's deputies out of the way while they're doing the raid to come in and buy marijuana and stickers. So it's definitely a problem within the community. It needs some regulation. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to happen or what the final bill will look like, but I think by the end of the session we will have something in place. But hopefully it's going to have enough teeth that we're going to be able to shut these services down. We do have a bill that we had introduced last year that would have specified some monetary penalties, but the main thing we had in there would have been, if you were shut down for operating an illegal store, you would not be allowed to receive a license to operate in the future under OCM.
Interesting. Assemblyman Chris Friend is our guest. We have to take a short break. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview right here on Frankly Speaking. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio, and this interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services, and we have Assemblyman Chris Friend on the phone. Thanks again for joining us, Chris.
Sure thing.
One topic that has been consistent, we're broadcasting a little over a week and a half here, consistent, I think, with just about every guest, has been bail reform. Now, I know Governor Hochul pushed something that I don't believe went far enough, but an attempt at a somewhat of a bail reform, and that was instantly turned down by her party and rejected by her party. So what do you think about initiatives to change bail reform, and will we see anything with the governor claiming that she's gonna fight this fight?
Yeah, and that's definitely very interesting. The governor has really kind of drawn the line in the sand that she's not going to end the budget negotiations until there is something done on what everybody's referring to as bail reform. And I think the real issue that we want to look at is judicial discretion, or some people are referring to it as the dangerousness clause. And the reason I want to just bring that up, clarify that, is that there were some changes that need to be made to bail. Again, you don't want to be just locking up the poor, the people that don't have access or connections. You want to give everybody that ability to be able to have access to the streets. And just also just discovery. Changes of discovery had to be made to give everybody the opportunity to have a fair trial and access to all the information. So there were some good changes that happened with bail. And that's why I like to refer to this as judicial discretion is what has to happen. And that's something that Governor Hochul did include in her budget. It didn't really go far enough. Both one houses said, nope, we've done enough. We're not going to do any more. There are no issues. And actually, they want to go farther. They want to be able to release people once you reach the age of 55. They're trying to reduce the number of penalties that would actually have you go to jail. And it just goes on and on about the insane things that they want to do. And I got to tell you, I mean, just this summer, the previous chief of police in Elmira, he stopped a knife fight on the street. And that individual that was wielding the knife and causing harm and threatening people, he was out before the former chief of police had that paperwork finished. And I hear this all the time across our community. The number of times that small crime where somebody might come in and take them out of the store, they're processed, come right back out, and they're stealing something again. It goes over and over again. Yeah. And again, it gets ridiculous. So we have to really give that judicial discretion back to the judges to say they know when they see these revolving doors, people are coming through over and over and over again, and they know the right thing to do. And we need to be able to give that discretion back to the judges. I don't know that it's going to happen in the budget. I think that is something that could possibly happen outside the budget. But Kathy Hochul has drawn that line. She said that this is what the hill that I'm going to stand on for this budget. She did hold up last year's budget for 9 days to make some changes, some minor tweaks. And so hopefully that's going to happen again this time, and that we will get closer to having full judicial discretion going forward. But I'm thinking that the Senate has tested the governor multiple times this year, and they've come out on top. And I think that they're feeling like they're going to be pretty confident that they're going to move forward with a bill that they want.
Well, I think it's smart for Governor Hochul from a political standpoint to make this her fight, because poll after poll after poll shows statewide that safety is a priority, and these crimes are running rampant throughout our state. It's terrifying to read the New York Post sometimes. So I think it's actually smart on the political front for her to make that move.
Oh, it really is. I mean, that's what Lee Zeldin was. That was his prime focus, was public safety, and it worked. We picked up a significant number of congressional seats in New York State on that topic alone. And it's true. I mean, there isn't a place in New York that is as safe as it was decades ago.
Yeah. That's a great point. We're going to take another short break. Assemblyman Chris Friend is our guest this morning. He's calling live from Albany. We'll be right back with the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview right here on Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services, and on the phone we have Assemblyman Chris Friend. Chris, I know we just have a moment before we go and let you go because you're busy. You're in Albany, but we talked with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano just the other day. Tell us a little bit, because I'm not sure people are aware about the push for electric vehicles. I was going to make a joke earlier in the program, but I ran out of time. In Colorado, they're actually going to start banning new gas stations in this one town. I thought, I could see New York doing that next.
Yeah, we're definitely moving in that direction, which is very sad. New York still only accounts for about 0.5%, 0.4% of the emissions worldwide, and the impact that we have is just going the opposite direction. So electric vehicles, what's interesting is in 2027, all school districts are going to have all their new buses that they purchase are going to have to be zero emission, and it's typically understood that those are going to have to be electric vehicles. And then by 2035, their entire fleet has to be zero emission again, and all the push has been towards electric vehicles, not any kind of really zero emission with a gas hybrid or anything along those lines. And just the impact that that's going to have is in the school district, in Horsehead School District, just to bring in that electric line to the bus garage is going to cost roughly $10 million on taxpayers. The Horsehead School District just repaved their bus garage, so they can't get any of that money reimbursed from the state. They've got the taxpayers, local taxpayers, are the ones going to have to foot that bill, or somebody's going to have to spend an inordinate amount of time filling out paperwork, asking for waivers and requests to do this issue. In the village of Fornell, to do their electric upgrade, to go all electric, which is what the state wants to do, not just for electric vehicles, but all electric, it's going to cost $2 billion just for the electrical upgrade. That's not doing everything else that needs to be done. $2 billion with a B in the village of Fornell. So this money is not trivial. It's not small. It's pretty big. And the issue that we're having is that a lot of this is being forced on upstate to absorb and to come up with the initiatives. So the school buses, this is typically a upstate issue when I'm talking about the fleet. You don't see it as big of, it's not really what you're facing in New York City. And just this past week, we actually passed a bill that exempts the authorities like MTA, which is the major busing authority in New York City, from the electric vehicle requirement. The rest of the state is going to have for all the state fleet vehicles by 2035, they need to be electric, and medium and heavy duty vehicles by 2040. So you can see a significant difference in the timeline. Our upstate school bus fleet, 2027, and it's going to be 8 years later before the state fleet, minus the authorities, which are the busing system, and 2040 for the medium and heavy. And then they put a little caveat in for all of the state fleet that if it's not possible, that they're exempted. They won't have to go that direction. That same thing hasn't been put in place for our school buses. Our school buses, if they have issues, they're going to have to go through a whole waiver process, again, eating up an inordinate amount of days and times and hours to do something that we're not in any possible feasible way to put in place yet. Sometime in the future, possibly, but each of these buses cost anywhere from 2 to 5 times as much as what the current school buses are. And if you want to bring people out to the school bus or the school board elections, this issue is going to drive it, because every one of these buses is going to have to become before the voters, and this is going to turn down an awful lot of school budgets in the future if you're trying to drive this through our communities.
I mean, you already hear people complain about their school taxes. Imagine what this is going to do.
Yeah, I mean, and that was something that Governor Hochul in this current budget, he said, all right, I have fully funded foundation aid. I've put in money for inflation on top of that. But what I expect from school boards now is to drop your property tax rate because that is the number one driver for property taxes in New York State. And she didn't make a big deal about that. She kind of did that under the scenes to the school boards and all the school districts. But she's trying to say she recognizes that they are the top property tax driver, and she wants to do something about it. But this issue is going to kill that. There's no way you can drop property taxes and have electric school buses at the same time. And the other issue with the whole thing is that these vehicles with the batteries are heavier. And when you get to a school bus, some of these school buses, they may become too heavy to be able to go over some of the culverts and the bridges and the roads that we currently have set up. So that means we're going to be spending more money to upgrade our roads, upgrade our culverts, upgrade the bridges, and we're not currently funding that in our state budget to the level that it should be funded. Again, we spend more money on the MTA on their budget, and the New York State DOT for chips and everything that we do upstate, they only get a fraction of what the MTA receives. And if they want to go through this with this proposal, then put your money where your mouth is. Start funding these initiatives like they need to be funded if you want to put them in place. The infrastructure.
I agree.
Mr. Hornell, where are they going to come up with $2 billion to do those electrical upgrades? No. That's not going to happen. So the state needs to come forward with its money if they want to build this, move this stuff forward. It is feasible. We had a hearing last year in Albany, and there's some people in New York City that are doing some really dynamic changes to go all electric. But unfortunately, they testified at the committee that our state departments in New York, they're not listening to them. And they want to go just the opposite way because, again, they're beholden to lobbyists in New York State and to the person that's paying that war chest, whether it's a legislator or the governor. And they're not listening to these private small companies that are doing some really fabulous work to transition to electric in the city.
Hey, Chris, I can't believe it. We're already out of time. I can't thank you enough for being on the program. Obviously, we had more to cover. Can we have you on again soon?
We sure can. And hopefully I'll be back in district and we can do it live.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Assemblyman Chris Friend has been our guest. Stay with us. That was the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you to Assemblyman Chris Friend for being on the program, calling in from Albany. And thank you to all the people that reached out at that number and that email so we could ask him some of those questions. He covered, like predicted, everything that we were talking about because they're major issues. I'm going to have to already take a short break because we ran just a little bit long with the Assemblyman, but we appreciate him taking the time while he's there working on the important issues from Albany to call in. We'll have him as soon as we can in studio to talk with him. And we're going to have many guests. You know, he mentioned Hornell could be looking at that $2 billion bill for the electric vehicles for the school buses. Well, how appropriate, because on Tuesday of next week, we're going to be talking to Hornell Mayor Bill Buckley, and we'll have to ask him just that, get their opinion, what their residents think. Again, I know we keep talking about people leaving in droves in New York or how bad it can be to live here for financial reasons and economic. And the proposals keep getting worse and worse. And in this case, they seem like they're using upstate New York as the test subject, starting with the school buses here. But let's take that short break. Please stay with us. We'll wrap things up when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street in Corning. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Couple last things before we wrap up. Again, a big thank you to Assemblyman Chris Friend. On the program tomorrow, Congressman Nick Langworthy, our new representative in the 23rd Congressional District. He's going to join us on the first time on the program. He stopped by to see the studios, and we really appreciate that. I know he's excited to be on, and we're very excited to have him on the program. I mentioned these yesterday, but today both of these events are occurring, so I wanted to mention it quickly if I could. The community blood drive today. It's not too late. You can go and call those numbers and sign up, or I'm sure if you just arrive, that will not be a problem because there is a desperate need for blood in our community, in our state, and nationwide. So 12 p.m. till 6 p.m. at the Forest View Gang Mills Fire Department, right in the meeting room. That's 125 Forest Drive. Technically mailing address, painted post, but that is Gang Mills. So we wish them all the best and hope that that is a successful blood drive. And the second event is tonight. Many of you in the community remember just the great Father Lou Brown. This is a benefit in his honor, and it's put on by the Catholic Charities of Steuben in Livingston. It's a toasting and tasting tonight from 5 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. at the Radisson Hotel in Corning. You can find out more at that website. Of course, you must be 21 to participate in the alcohol tastings, but there's samples from local wineries, breweries, distilleries. Hors d'oeuvres will be there if you're hungry. Silent auctions. So that's to honor Father Lou Brown. What a nice guy. So we are out of time. Do I have time? I'm gonna go for it, folks. Bear with me. I'm going to see if we have just 30 seconds to mention one last quick story. No, I think I X'd out of it. Let me see. There we go. So we mentioned that with Chris. This goes back to what we were saying about crime. And I wanted to make sure that we got to this. Store owners actually went to a rally. This is how bad it's got with the lawlessness. And a lot of this is because of the bail reform. If not the majority of it, this is a rally by store owners to combat the shoplifting. According to the Organization of Store Owners, the statistics, listen to this. Last year, merchants made 63,000 complaints about vandalism and theft. 327 repeat offenders account for 30% of the crimes committed, and recidivists were arrested 6,600 times last year, or about 20 times each. Now, this is a city, this is upstate, this is affecting everywhere because it's not even a slap on the wrist. That sounds more like there's more teeth to a slap on the wrist than what is actually happening to these criminals. So I just thought it tied in with everything we've been talking about today, and I'm sure when we talk to the congressman tomorrow, we'll be discussing about New York issues, but of course he's federal, but he'll talk about New York issues and what they're doing at the federal level when it comes to law and order, because it seems like we're at a time when law and order has not been a priority. But we are out of time. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7.